The father's justice. I never thought the same hands I once guided, steadying a baseball glove on a warm summer afternoon, would be the ones that nearly broke me. Ethan Carter hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. For a moment, everything went silent. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that presses against your chest and steals the air from your lungs. My body folded before I even understood what had happened. Pain spread through my ribs like fire under my skin, sharp and immediate, forcing me to the floor. "You manipulative old man," he shouted, his voice echoing through the house I had spent years building for him. I looked up at him, really looked. Not at my son, but at the stranger standing in his place. There was no hesitation in his eyes, no guilt, just anger, and something colder beneath it, something I had never seen before. "I raised you," I said, my voice barely holding together. "I gave you everything I had." But the words meant nothing to him. "All you ever did was hold me back," Ethan snapped, stepping closer. "You had years to prepare for this. Years. And now, when I need you, you suddenly have nothing?" Another wave of pain hit me as I tried to sit up. My ribs protested, each breath shallow and uneven. I could taste iron in my mouth. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a distant part of me, trained by years in the army, remained calm, observing, calculating. This wasn't just anger. This was desperation. And desperation makes people dangerous. "You think this is about the money?" I asked quietly. Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It's always about money," he said. "It's about you refusing to act like a father when it actually matters." A father. The word lingered in the air, heavy and distorted. For 30 years, I had lived that role without question. Late nights, double shifts, empty chairs at dinner after Sarah passed, and a promise I made to her in a hospital room that still smelled like antiseptic and fear. "I'll take care of him." I had kept that promise. Maybe too well. Because somewhere along the way, the boy I raised learned that love meant sacrifice, but never responsibility. And now, standing in front of me, he wasn't asking anymore. He was taking. I pressed my hand against the floor, forcing myself upright just enough to meet his eyes again. My body trembled, but not from fear, from clarity. Because in that moment, everything became painfully simple. Ethan thought I was weak. He thought I was broke. He thought this house, this life, was all I had left. He was wrong. There was something he didn't know, something I had protected for 15 years, hidden behind old furniture, modest living, and careful silence. $85,000. Not spent. Not touched. Waiting. Not just as a safety net, but as a test. A test of the kind of man my son had become, when he believed there was nothing left to take from me. I looked at him, really looked this time, and for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't facing my son anymore. I was facing the result of every choice he had made. And every choice has a cost. I used to believe that sacrifice was enough to raise a good man, that if you gave your child everything you had, they would grow into someone who understood the value of it. I was wrong. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 58 years old, a retired construction engineer, and before that, a soldier. 4 years in the Army taught me discipline, patience, and how to stay calm when everything around you starts to fall apart. I carried those lessons with me long after I left the service, into every job site, every decision, every moment of fatherhood. But nothing in the Army prepared me for losing Sarah, my wife, the only person who ever knew how to balance me. Cancer took her fast, 6 months from diagnosis to silence. One day, we were planning a weekend trip. The next, I was standing in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and endings, holding her hand as she made me promise. Take care of Ethan. He was 15. Still a boy. Still needed guidance, boundaries, someone to say no when it mattered. That someone had always been Sarah. After she was gone, I didn't know how to replace that. So I didn't. Instead, I chose the easier path, the quieter one. I worked longer hours, took every overtime shift I could find. I told myself I was doing it for him, for his future, his stability, his education, and maybe that was true. But it was also easier than coming home to an empty house, easier than learning how to be both mother and father at the same time. So I gave him things. When he struggled in school, I told him it was okay. When he avoided responsibility, I said he'd grow out of it. When he wanted something, I found a way to provide it. Not because he earned it, but because I didn't want him to feel the loss I was still carrying every day. I remember nights sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of me, calculating what I could cut just to make sure Ethan never had to worry. His college alone cost me over $40,000, money I didn't really have, but found anyway. And when he graduated, I thought I had done it. I thought I had kept my promise. But looking back now, I see the truth I didn't want to face. I didn't raise a strong man. I raised someone who believed the world would always adjust itself to his needs. Because I had. Sarah used to say something I didn't fully understand back then. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's permission. I didn't set boundaries. I removed obstacles. And in doing so, I taught Ethan something dangerous. That effort was optional. Those consequences could be avoided. That someone would always step in before things got too hard. I thought I was protecting him, but I wasn't. I was preparing him for failure. And now, standing here years later, feeling the echo of his anger still lingering in my bones, I can finally admit something I spent a long time avoiding. The man Ethan became didn't happen overnight. It was built, slowly, quietly. Every time I chose comfort over discipline, by every moment, I replaced guidance with guilt. By every sacrifice that came without expectation, I gave him everything, except for the one thing he needed most: limits. At first, it didn't look like a problem, just ambition. That's what I told myself when Ethan started talking about money, not earning it, but multiplying it, fast, effortless, almost like it was a game he had already figured out while the rest of the world was still catching up. "Dad, this is the future," he said one evening, leaning back in his chair with that quiet confidence I used to be proud of. "People are making millions from crypto. You just don't understand how it works." Maybe I didn't, but I understood patterns, and I had seen enough in my life to know that anything promising easy wealth usually comes with a hidden cost. Ethan wasn't interested in that part. He showed me screenshots, charts going up, stories of strangers who turned a few thousand into a fortune overnight. Every conversation became the same. Traditional jobs were for people who lacked vision. Stability was for those too afraid to take risks. He wasn't just chasing money. He was chasing an identity. And somewhere along the way, Olivia Brooks became part of that identity. When Ethan introduced her to me, she seemed polite, well-spoken, confident. But there was something else, something harder to define, a constant awareness of how things looked, not how they felt, how they appeared. She was always on her phone, always framing moments, adjusting angles, capturing pieces of life, as if they only mattered once they were seen by someone else. At dinner, she would pause before eating, just long enough to take a picture. On weekends, she posted photos of places I knew weren't cheap, restaurants with soft lighting and prices that didn't match Ethan's salary. Trips to wineries, boutique hotels, and designer stores. Building a brand, she called it. Ethan called it success. And slowly, I started to see the shift. He began dressing differently, talking differently, measuring everything in terms of status, value, perception. It wasn't about what he had anymore. It was about what people believed he had. There were signs. Small at first. He upgraded his car, far too soon. Bought a watch I knew he couldn't afford. Talked about investments with confidence, but avoided details when I asked questions. And then there were the gaps. The silence between his so-called wins. Weeks where he said nothing about crypto, followed by sudden excitement when the market went up again. Like someone celebrating a single victory while ignoring a long list of losses. I didn't confront him. Not yet. But I watched, because I had seen this kind of behavior before. Not in markets, but in people. The need to prove something. To keep up an image that costs more than it gives. And the most dangerous part wasn't the money. It was the belief behind it. Ethan didn't think he was taking risks. He thought he was smarter than the system. And people who believe that rarely see the fall coming. By the time I realized how deep it had gone, it wasn't just ambition anymore. It was dependency. On attention. On validation. On a life that only existed when someone else was watching. They showed up on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The kind of day that used to mean something. I was in the backyard, tending to the small garden Sarah and I had planted years ago. The soil was dry, the air still, and for a moment, everything felt simple again. Then I heard the car. Ethan stepped out first, smiling, but it wasn't the kind of smile that comes naturally. It looked practiced, controlled. Olivia followed, dressed like she was heading somewhere far more important than my porch. "Dad, we've got incredible news," Ethan said, walking toward me with a kind of excitement that felt just a little too sharp. We sat outside, same old chairs, same quiet space that had held birthdays, late-night talks, and the kind of conversations that build a family. But this felt different. Olivia held out her hand first. The ring caught the sunlight. Bright, expensive, designed to be noticed. "We're getting married," she said. I smiled. Of course I did. "Congratulations," I told them. "Your mother would have loved this." For a brief moment, something softened in Ethan's expression. Then it disappeared. "We're planning a September wedding," Olivia added, already unlocking her phone. "Something elegant, something people will remember." People, not family, not meaning. People. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I recognized that posture. I had seen it when he was younger, right before he asked for something he wasn't sure I'd agree to. "Dad, we need your help." There it was. I didn't say anything, just waited. "The venue alone is $8,000, he continued, catering for about 150 guests, another 7. Then, photography, flowers, decorations. He paused, like he was building toward something that needed weight. "We need $20,000. The number didn't just land. It hit. Hard. For a second, I thought I had heard him wrong. 20,000, I repeated quietly. Olivia nodded, scrolling through images on her phone. Venues, dresses, curated perfection. "It's actually pretty reasonable for what we're planning." Reasonable. I looked at Ethan, waiting for something. Hesitation, maybe. A sign that he understood what he was asking. There was nothing. Just expectation. Like this was already decided, and I was simply catching up. "Son," I said carefully. "That's a lot of money." His expression shifted immediately. Not confusion, irritation. "Other parents do it," he replied. "Olivia's father already offered 5,000, and he makes less than you." The words came faster now. Sharper. "This is our wedding, Dad. The most important day of our lives." Olivia added softly but with precision. "We're not asking for anything unreasonable. It's what families do." Families. The word echoed, but it didn't feel the same anymore. The air between us tightened, as something invisible had just been pulled too far. "I can try to help," I said. "But not like that. Maybe 5,000. With some time." Silence. Then Ethan laughed. Not out of humor. Out of disbelief. 5,000? He repeated. "That's it?" The temperature of the moment dropped instantly. I could feel it, the shift from request to judgment, from conversation to confrontation. He stood up, pacing once, then turned back to me with a look I hadn't seen before. Cold. Disappointed. "You've had years, Dad," he said. "Years to prepare for something like this." I stayed where I was, hands resting on my knees, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't know I was supposed to. Olivia looked at Ethan, then back at me, her expression polite, but distant. And just like that, the space that once felt like home became something else. Not a place of family, but a place of negotiation. And I could already tell. This wasn't going to end with a simple no. I didn't tell him the truth. Not about the money. Not about the account that had been sitting quietly in the background of my life for 15 years, untouched, unnoticed, and, most importantly, unknown to Ethan. $85,000. It wasn't luck. It wasn't sudden. It was the result of careful decisions, a life insurance payout after Sarah passed, combined with years of restraint, modest living, and a discipline I never abandoned after the Army. I never spent more than I needed, never chased comfort at the cost of security. That money was never meant for luxury. It was meant for stability, for emergencies, for the unknown. But over time, it became something else. A measure, a way to understand the man my son had become, without interference, without influence. Because if Ethan knew the truth, everything would change. His tone, his expectations, his behavior. And I didn't want to see the version of him that reacted to wealth. I wanted to see the version of him that believed there was none. So I made a decision, not out of anger, not out of punishment, but out of clarity. I let him believe I was struggling. My pension is limited, I told him calmly that afternoon. Between the house, medical expenses, and everything else, I just don't have that kind of money. The words came out steady, practiced, controlled. Years of military training had taught me how to maintain composure under pressure, how to say exactly what needed to be said without revealing more than necessary. Ethan didn't question the details. He reacted to the conclusion. And that reaction was everything. Because what I was doing wasn't just withholding money. I was observing, carefully, deliberately, like I had been trained to do years ago. In the Army, we called it gathering intelligence, watching patterns, identifying intent, understanding behavior before making a move. You don't act on assumptions, you act on evidence. And right now, Ethan was giving me evidence. Not through what he said, but through how he said it, through the impatience in his voice. The frustration came too quickly. The absence of concern replaced entirely by expectation. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply held the line. Because this wasn't about winning a conversation. It was about revealing the truth. Who was he when there was nothing left to take? Would he step back, reconsider, adjust his expectations? Or would he push harder, demand more, break, when the outcome didn't match his desires? That's what I needed to know. So I stayed quiet, watched, listened. Every call, every message, every visit. I noted the changes, the escalation, the pressure building beneath the surface. And with each passing day, one thing became clearer. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about entitlement. And the moment I chose to hide that $85,000 was the moment I stopped being just a father and became an observer of my own son. The calls didn't stop. At first, it was once a day, short, controlled conversations that sounded almost reasonable on the surface. Ethan would talk about venues, timelines, and deposits already placed. He framed everything like a plan already in motion, something I was expected to support, not question. Then it became twice a day, morning and night, and the tone began to change. "Dad, we're running out of time," he said one evening, his voice tighter than before. "These places don't wait. If we lose the venue, everything falls apart." I listened, said very little, because it wasn't the words that mattered anymore. It was the pressure behind them. By the end of the week, the calls weren't conversations. They were campaigns. Each one is designed to push a little harder, stretch my patience, wear down my resistance. And Ethan wasn't alone anymore. Olivia joined in. At first, she stayed in the background, her voice soft, carefully measured. But it didn't take long before she stepped forward, her tone polished but deliberate. "Daniel," she said during one call, "we're not trying to put you in a difficult position. We're just asking you to be part of something important." Important. That word kept coming back. Not meaningful, Not necessary. Important. As if the scale of the wedding defined the value of the marriage. Then came the comparisons. Carefully placed. Repeated. Designed to sting. My friend just had a wedding in Napa, Olivia mentioned casually. Her parents covered almost everything. Ethan picked it up immediately. Yeah, and her dad doesn't even make as much as you used to. Another call. Another example. Jessica's wedding cost $25,000, Olivia said. Her family made it happen. Other fathers find a way, Ethan added. They don't make excuses. Excuses. That's what my boundaries became. Not limitations. Not reality. Excuses. Each word was deliberate. Each comparison sharpened. And I could feel what they were trying to do. Not convincing me. Condition me. Make me feel smaller. Less than. Like I was failing some invisible standard that everyone else seemed to meet. I stayed calm. Outwardly. But inside, something shifted. Because this wasn't about celebration anymore. It was about the image. About proving something to people who weren't even part of our lives. Since when do strangers decide how we spend money? I asked once. Ethan didn't hesitate. It's not about strangers, he said. It's about reputation. About building something. Building something. But what they were building wasn't a future. It was a performance. And performances have a cost. One that someone always ends up paying. As the days passed, the pressure intensified. The calls grew longer, more aggressive, less patient. Ethan stopped asking. He started insisting. Dad, we've already committed to this, he said. You can't just back out now. Back out. As if I had ever agreed. As if silence had been mistaken for consent. Then came the shift. The moment everything crossed a line. Let's be clear, Ethan said during one call, his voice cold, controlled, stripped of any warmth. If you don't support us now, then we'll know exactly where we stand with you. I didn't respond right away, because I knew what was coming next. And when it came, it landed exactly where it was meant to. We're serious, Dad, he continued. If you can't be there for us, then maybe it's better we just cut things off. Silence filled the space between us. Not confusion. No hesitation. Just clarity. This wasn't pressure anymore. It was leverage. A relationship reduced to a transaction. Support us or lose us. I sat there, phone in hand, listening to the quiet on the other end after he finished speaking. Waiting, maybe for him to take it back. To soften it. To remember who he was talking to. He didn't, because in his mind, this made sense. This was justified, and that realization hurt more than anything he had said before, because it meant something had changed at a level deeper than anger, deeper than frustration. It meant he believed this was acceptable, that love could be negotiated, measured, withheld. I exhaled slowly, steadying my voice before I spoke. If that's how you see it, I said quietly, then I understand more than you think. There was a pause, brief, almost uncertain, but it passed, and the pressure returned, heavier than before, because now they had made their position clear, and without realizing it, so had I. I wasn't being asked for help anymore. I was being tested, and so were they. The silence after that call told me everything I needed to know. Not because Ethan had explained anything, but because he hadn't. When people are honest, they talk. When they're hiding something, they get defensive, vague, careful. And Ethan had become all three. So I stopped asking questions and started looking for answers. Carefully, quietly, the way I had been trained years ago when guessing could cost you more than you were willing to lose. I began with what was visible. His social media. At first glance, it looked like success. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, polished smiles framed under soft lighting. Olivia's captions painted a life of momentum, growth, luxury. But I wasn't looking at the surface. I was looking at the gaps. The timing, the inconsistencies, Moments of sudden celebration, followed by long stretches of silence. Posts about wins that felt isolated, disconnected from any real pattern of progress. Then I noticed something else. One night, Ethan shared a screenshot from a trading app. He highlighted a gain, a clean, upward line, numbers in green. But the rest of the screen told a different story. If you knew where to look, the total balance, partially visible in the corner, was negative. Deeply negative. He had cropped the image just enough to hide it, but not enough to erase it. That was the first real crack. From there, everything started to align. I reached out to Michael Reynolds, a lawyer I trusted. Not for a case, not yet, but for clarity. He connected me with someone who could verify what I was beginning to suspect. The results came back faster than I expected, and they were worse. Over the past 8 months, Ethan had lost approximately $17,000. Not invested. Lost. High-risk trades, repeated entries into volatile markets, short-term gains followed by larger collapses, a pattern that wasn't a strategy. It was chasing recovery, trying to win back what was already gone. And when that fails, people look for another source. I sat there, staring at the numbers, letting the weight of it settle. 17,000. That wasn't a mistake. That was a spiral. And suddenly, everything made sense. The urgency, the pressure, the shift in his tone. This wasn't about a wedding. It never was. The venue, the flowers, the guest list. Those were just the surface. The real reason sat underneath it all, hidden behind carefully chosen words and borrowed confidence. Debt, desperation, and a need to cover it before anyone else saw the truth. Even Olivia, especially Olivia, because the life they were building, the one displayed online, couldn't survive exposure. It depended on illusion, and illusions require constant maintenance. I leaned back in my chair, the room quiet around me, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt something else, clarity, because now I understood exactly what I was dealing with. Ethan wasn't just asking for help. He was trying to transfer the consequences of his choices onto me. Wrap them in the language of family. Call it support. Call it love. But beneath it, it was still the same thing. A bailout. And the moment I saw it clearly, the decision became simple. Not easy, but simple. I wouldn't fund his mistakes, and I wouldn't pretend to see them. Because sometimes, the most dangerous lies aren't the ones people tell others. They're the ones they tell themselves, until someone forces them to face the truth. They came back the next evening, right on time. No hesitation, no small talk. Ethan walked in first, his posture rigid, jaw tight. Olivia followed, quieter than usual, her eyes moving across the room like she was already sensing something had changed. "Dad, we need to settle this tonight," Ethan said, not even sitting down at first. "No more delays." I nodded slowly, then gestured toward the couch. "Sit." There was something in my voice that made him pause. They both sat. For a moment, the room felt still, like everything was waiting. Not for a decision, for a reveal. I reached for the folder on the table. "Before we talk about money," I said calmly, "there's something you both need to see." Ethan frowned. Olivia leaned forward slightly. I opened the folder and slid the documents across the table. Bank statements, trading logs, screenshots, facts. "What is this?" Olivia asked, her voice tight. "Look closer." She picked up the first page, then the next. I watched her expression change. Confusion, then focus, then something sharper. "Ethan?" she said slowly. He didn't answer. "Ethan," she repeated, louder now. "What am I looking at?" I leaned back slightly. "These are records of your fiancé's crypto activity," I said, "over the last 8 months." Olivia flipped through faster now, her hands beginning to shake. $17,000. Lost, I continued. Not invested. Lost. Silence. Heavy. Then, "That's not," Ethan started. "Don't," I cut in quietly. Don't insult her intelligence, or mine. Olivia looked up at him, really looked. You told me you were making money, she said. I am, Ethan snapped. It's just temporary losses. I can recover. With what? She interrupted. With money you don't have? Her voice cracked on the last word. And just like that, the illusion shattered. This wedding, I said evenly, was never about celebration. It was about covering what you lost. Ethan stood up suddenly, pacing once, running his hands through his hair. You don't understand how this works, he said, his voice rising. This is how people build wealth. You take risks. You took losses, Olivia said coldly. And now you're trying to hide them. He turned on her. I'm trying to fix them. No, I said. You're trying to transfer them. That stopped him. For a second, then something in his expression changed. The control slipped. You set me up, he said quietly. No, I replied. I gave you time to tell the truth. You let me beg, he snapped, stepping closer. You let me think you had nothing. I held his gaze. I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing. Olivia stood up slowly. I can't do this, she said, her voice low, shaken. I'm not marrying into lies. Ethan turned toward her, panic flashing across his face. Olivia, wait, this isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, she said. You lied to me. You lied to him. And now you're trying to drag both of us into it. She stepped back. I'm done. The door opened, closed, and just like that, she was gone. The silence that followed felt different, heavier, more dangerous. Ethan didn't move at first. Then slowly, he turned back toward me. And what I saw in his eyes wasn't angry anymore. It was something deeper, something darker. You ruined everything, he said. No, I answered quietly. You did. That was the moment, the point where words stopped mattering. He stepped forward fast. Too fast. The first Udar came without warning, his fist slamming into my stomach, forcing the air out of my lungs in a single, violent motion. I folded instinctively, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. Pain followed. Sharp. Immediate. I tried to steady myself, but the second hit came higher into my ribs. Something cracked. Not loud, but enough. I stumbled backward, hitting the edge of the table before falling to the floor. Everything was fine until you got involved, he shouted. Each word came with movement, pacing, then stopping, then stepping closer again. You think you're better than me? He said, breathing hard. You think you can judge me? I forced myself to look up at him, not with fear, with clarity. You're not angry at me, I said, my voice strained but steady. You're angry because you got caught. That was it. The final break. He lunged again, grabbing my shirt, pulling me forward before shoving me back down. The room blurred for a second, the pain spreading, echoing through my chest. But through it all, one thing remained clear. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't about a wedding. This was about a man who had lost control and couldn't accept the consequences. And in that moment, lying on the floor, struggling to breathe, I finally understood something I had refused to see for years. I hadn't just lost my son. I had been losing him for a long time. And now, there was nothing left to hold on to. I woke up to a steady beeping, soft, mechanical, the kind of sound that tells you you're still here. For a moment, I didn't move. Didn't think. Just lay there, letting the weight of it settle. Then the pain returned, not sharp like before, but deep, constant, sitting beneath every breath. Hospital. That was the first clear thought. White ceiling, antiseptic air, the faint hum of machines. I turned my head slightly and saw him sitting beside the bed. Michael Reynolds. Calm, composed, watching. You're awake, he said, standing up slowly. Good. Everything? My voice felt distant when I spoke. How bad? 3 cracked ribs, concussion. Bruising, he replied. You were lucky. Lucky. I almost smiled. Michael placed a folder on the table beside me. We have everything we need, he continued. The recordings, the threats, the financial pressure. And your neighbor saw them leave. I closed my eyes for a second. Not out of pain. Out of understanding. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. It was a case. What happens now? I asked. Michael didn't hesitate. Now, we let the system do what it's designed to do. The investigation moved fast. Faster than I expected. Evidence has a way of doing that, when it's clear, when it's undeniable. Ethan made it easier. He came to the hospital the next day. Not to apologize. Not to check on me. To control the story. Dad, this got out of hand, he said, standing too close to the bed. You fell. That's what happened. I looked at him, really looked. There was no regret. Only calculation. You hit me, I said quietly. His jaw tightened. No, he replied. And if you say otherwise, things could get worse. He leaned in slightly. A mistake. Because he didn't know the room was already wired. Michael had arranged it. The police were listening. Every word. Every threat. And just like that, the last piece fell into place. 3 days later, Ethan Carter was arrested at his office. No warning. No preparation. Just handcuffs and silence where his confidence used to be. The trial didn't take long. There wasn't much to argue. Medical reports, audio recordings, witness testimony. Facts, lined up one after another. Olivia testified. Clear, direct. She spoke about the pressure, the lies, the money. She didn't look at him once. By the time it was over, there was nothing left to defend. 5 years. That was the sentence. Assault. Extortion. Criminal threats. The judge didn't soften the words. Violence against your own father, he said, is not just a crime. It is a failure of character. I sat there, listening, not feeling victory. Not satisfied. Just stillness. Because justice doesn't always feel like winning. Sometimes, it just feels like something necessary. Something final. When they led Ethan away, he glanced back once. Just once. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Because there was nothing left to say. And Olivia, she was already gone. Long before the verdict was read. Some endings don't happen in courtrooms. They happen the moment the truth is no longer something you can hide. Recovery didn't happen all at once. It came slowly. In quiet mornings, in careful movements, in breaths that no longer hurt the way they used to. The house felt different. Quieter, but not empty. Linda Harper started coming by every morning with coffee, the kind Sarah used to make. Simple, warm, familiar. We didn't talk much at first. We didn't need to. Some things are understood better in silence. Emily would visit on weekends, telling me about her work at the hospital, her plans, her small victories. There was something steady in her, something honest. No performance. No need to prove anything. Just purpose. And being around that reminded me of something I had forgotten. What real values look like. A few weeks after the trial, I made a decision about the money. The $85,000. The same money that had exposed everything. I gave it away. Every dollar. Donated to a foundation that protects elderly people from abuse. Because money, in the wrong hands, can destroy. But in the right place, it can protect. It can restore. It can mean something. I sat alone that evening, looking out over the yard, the same place where everything had started to change. And for the first time, I felt at peace. Not because things turned out the way I wanted, but because I finally understood something I had spent years avoiding. Money can make people show you who they are, but it can never make them become someone they're not. And sometimes, the hardest truth to accept is this. Love doesn't mean protecting someone from consequences. It means having the strength to let them face them, even when it breaks your heart. So let me ask you this. If the people closest to you only stay when you give. Are they really staying for you or for what you provide?